Before we begin, let the silence settle around you. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel crawling into the corners of the room. The story I'm about to tell wasn't meant to be spoken out loud. Someone carried it alone for far too long, afraid that saying it would make it real again. If a piece of their truth touches something you've kept buried, you can tell me in the comments. And if these quiet shadows keep pulling you back, you can like the video, subscribe, and tap the bell icon. Now don't move. Some memories wake up when they're listened to. My name is Evan. I'm 30 now, live in a small apartment over a laundromat in Minnesota, and I manage the frozen food section of a grocery store. I know. That sounds stupidly poetic for what I'm about to tell you. But that's why it's funny to people when they first hear it. Oh, you're scared of freezers and you work in frozen foods? That's like exposure therapy, bro. They don't get it. They don't hear what I hear when those compressors kick on and the frost crackles along the metal panels. They don't hear the scream. It's been 18 years, and I can still taste that day when I close my eyes. The cold air. The smell of lake water trapped in ice. The sound of something alive under us that shouldn't have been alive anymore. If I had known what was coming, I never would have gone out there. I would have stayed home, played video games, listened to my mom complain about heating bills. Anything but that. I was 12. We lived in a small town with one main road, 3 churches, a gas station, and a lake that everyone pretended not to be afraid of. We called it Miller's Lake, but nobody under 50 used the name. Kids called it the Pit. Adults called it that damn lake. A couple of people just called it where it happened, and everyone knew what they meant. There'd been accidents. Drunk teens driving too fast on summer nights. A fisherman who didn't come home. A kid who fell off a dock when I was little. People said it wasn't cursed, just unlucky. Then winter came, and the fear got buried under ice and routine. Every year, once it got thick enough, guys drove trucks out there, drilled holes, drank beer, pretended there weren't stories about things moving under the surface. That winter was colder than usual. School closed twice for snow. Pipes burst in half the town. My mom taped blankets over the windows and kept yelling at me to keep the doors shut because heat doesn't grow on trees. I remember that day was strangely quiet. No wind rattling the windows. No snow coming down. Just a low, flat sky and the kind of stillness that makes everything sound too close. My friends, Nate and Josh, showed up around noon with cheap hockey sticks and a half-flat puck. "You coming?" Josh said, breath fogging in the doorway. "Ice is perfect." My mom yelled from the kitchen, "Stay near the shoreline. You hear me? Not out by the middle. And be back before 4. "We will." I lied, already pulling on my boots. That should have been my warning. She never warned us like that. Not so specific. Not about the middle. We walked the half-mile to the lake, boots crunching on old snow. The air smelled like exhaust from distant trucks and something else. Faint and metallic, like the inside of a freezer that hasn't been opened in a while. Each breath felt cold all the way down, like inhaling glass. When we reached the shore, the ice looked solid. White, scuffed, with patches of clear blue where it had been wind-polished. Old skate marks cut through the surface in lazy loops. Someone's abandoned ice fishing shack sat closer to the center. A crooked little box with a tin chimney. Nobody was out that day. No fishermen. No trucks. Just us and a huge, white, empty sheet. "Dude, we've got the whole lake," Nate said. Grinning, did I remember thinking it was too quiet. No wind. No creaking trees. No far-off hum of skates or engines. Just the tiny sounds. The snow squeaking under our weight, zippers scratching, our own breathing. We stepped onto the ice. There's the sound ice makes when it accepts your weight. A low, resonant tone. Not cracking. More like a long, deep note played on some invisible instrument under your boots. I felt it vibrate up through my soles, into my ankles, my bones. It made the hair on my arms stand up. We walked, then shuffled, then started gliding, getting braver with each step. The ice groaned occasionally, but in that way people said was normal. "Good ice sings," they'd say. We played for a while. Tried to slap the puck between cracks, almost slipped 100 times. We laughed, yelled, fell, shoved each other. Just kids. After maybe an hour, my left bootlace came loose. I skated off to the side a bit, away from the puck, and dropped to one knee to tie it. That's when I heard it first. I thought it was just the echo of Josh's stick hitting the ice. A dull thump, but they were on the other side of the clearing, and their voices sounded far away. This was closer. Right under me. A single hollow knock. I froze, fingers hovering above my boot. The cold seeped through my jeans, into my knee. I stayed there, holding my breath. Then it came again. Knock. More distinct this time, not crackling, not shifting, like someone's knuckles against the underside of a table. I swallowed. The air felt suddenly sharper, tasting almost metallic. Guys? I called. Did you hear that? What? Nate shouted back, his voice bouncing weirdly across the ice. There was a pause, a silence that felt thicker than the cold. Then I heard it a third time. Only it wasn't just a knock anymore. It was a rhythm. 3 quick taps. A pause. Then a dragging sound, like something rough sliding along a smooth surface. I shouldn't have moved. I shouldn't have gotten closer. But I was 12. Curiosity wins at 12. I leaned forward, put a gloved hand on the ice, and pressed my ear down. The cold hit me like an electric shock. It burned. The surface smelled faintly of old water and dirt trapped in frost. For a second, all I heard was the dull roar of my own blood in my ears and the distant scrape of my friend's skates. Then, under all that, something else. A muffled tapping. Then, a sound I still can't describe without my chest tightening. It was a scream. Not clear, not sharp. It was warped, bubbling, like somebody trying to scream with a mouthful of water. The kind of sound you'd make if your lungs were full and you were still trying to force air out anyway. It rose up under my cheek, vibrating against my skin. I could feel it, not just hear it. Wet, choked panic trapped under a thick pain. Stop, I whispered, to nobody, but it got louder, closer, like whatever was down there realized someone was listening. I flinched, started to push myself up, and that's when I saw them. 5 pale shapes pressed against the underside of the ice, right where my hand had been. Fingers, not clear, not crisp, blurred by the depth and the thickness, but still unmistakable. 5 white, swollen fingers splayed wide, dragging in slow, desperate circles, trying to feel for a weak spot. The nails looked darker, like they were cracked or torn. My whole body tensed. My throat locked. The scream under me sharpened, cutting through the water, angrier now. More frantic. I jerked back so fast my hands slipped, palms scraping across the rough surface. The ice squealed under my gloves. My legs shot out from under me and I landed hard on my back, the cold punching up my spine, knocking the air out of me. For one horrible second, I was staring straight up at the sky, hearing that scream inside the ice, feeling the weight of empty space beneath the thin layer holding me. If this breaks, if this breaks, if this... Evan, Nate yelled. You good? I rolled onto my side, lungs burning, face stinging from the cold. The ice! I shouted, voice cracking. There's someone? I looked back at the spot where I'd seen the fingers. There was nothing there, just scuffed frost and cloudy blue-white ice. No shapes, no shadows, no movement. The scream faded into a low, distant moan. Then even that slipped away, swallowed by the enormous quiet of the lake. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd throw up. I heard someone. I insisted, scrambling to my feet. My legs felt shaky, like I'd just run for miles. Under the ice. I swear. Josh skated over, breath puffing in little white bursts. Dude, it's just the ice shifting, he said. You know, expanding and stuff. My uncle says it does that all the time. That wasn't shifting, I snapped. It was knocking and screaming. They exchanged a quick look. The kind of look kids give each other when they decide who's being dramatic. Maybe you're just freaked about the story, Nate said. About the kid who... Shut up, I said. Sharper than I meant to. He shut up. We lasted maybe 10 more minutes out there before I couldn't take it anymore. Every little creak felt like something pushing up. Every long, low groan vibrated in my teeth. I'm going back, I finally muttered. Seriously, Josh said. Already? You can stay, I said. I'm done. We left together. None of us said it out loud, but we all kept our pace just shy of running until our boots hit packed snow at the shoreline. Only then did I feel like I could breathe all the way in again. As we turned back, I listened. Just before we got to the trees, something changed in the air behind us. A subtle drop, like someone opening a freezer door far away. Then I heard it. Not knocking, not screaming. A long, shuddering exhale. Like somebody releasing their last breath. It seemed to slide across the ice, through the dry reeds near the shore, through our jackets. The tiny hairs on the back of my neck rose. I didn't turn around. None of us did. We pretended nothing had happened. Kids are good at pretending. I went home, stomped the snow off my boots, lied to my mom about staying near the shore, and tried to eat dinner with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. That night, I dreamed of fingers tapping on glass. The next winter, someone went missing near the lake. A man walking his dog didn't come back one evening. The dog was found tangled in its leash near the shore, whining. The man wasn't. The ice was broken near one of the old fishing holes. They never found his body. Thin ice, people said. Idiot should have known better. The winter after that, it was a teenage girl, supposedly headed home from a party, last seen walking past the access road. Her hat was found in the snowbank. Nothing else. Probably ran away, people said. Or slipped in somewhere. The lake's not safe. Every year someone disappeared. Every year when the freeze got deep and the ice thickened, there were nights when people down by the shore swore they heard something out there. Not coyotes. Not wolves. Not shifting plates. Screaming. Muffled. Distant. Like something buried under glass. I moved away as soon as I could. I told myself it was for work, for school, for a clean start. But really, I just wanted to live somewhere without a lake that froze solid. Now, I work with freezers for a living. The irony isn't lost on me. Sometimes, when I'm in the back room at closing, and the store is quiet, and the only sound is the steady hum of compressors and the crackle of frost building up on metal shelves, it hits me. That same vibration through my bones. That same low, resonant note under everything. I'll be stocking frozen peas, breathing in that chemical cold smell. Freon, old cardboard, plastic, and suddenly, under the hum, I'll hear it. Tap, tap, tap. Then, muffled, drowned by the white noise of the store, a sound I will never mistake for anything else. A scream. Warped, wet, like someone still trying to claw their way up from the bottom of a frozen lake. There are no lakes near my apartment. No ponds. No rivers. Just concrete and snowplows and storm drains. But when winter sets in and the temperatures drop, I wake up some nights to a sound outside my window. Not wind. Not pipes. Knocking. Soft, patient, rhythmic. Sometimes 3 taps. A pause. Then a dragging sound along the wall, like fingers searching for a weak spot. I tell myself it's just the building settling. Just ice shifting in the gutters. Just my brain replaying old terror on a loop. I tell myself I'm fine, I'm not. I know what I heard that day when I was 12. I know what I felt under my cheek. Those fingers, those circles, that desperate search for a way out. And I know, deep down, that whatever is under that lake doesn't stay there. Water seeps. Cold travels. Screams don't need a straight path to find you. If you live near a lake that freezes every winter, do me a favor. When the ice is thick and the world is quiet, don't go walking out there just because everyone says it's always been safe. Don't press your ear to the ice just to see if it makes a cool sound. And if you ever hear knocking from underneath, don't listen, because once you hear the screaming under the ice, it never really stops. It just waits. It hums along with your freezers, your radiators, your pipes. It follows you into every cold, quiet room, reminding you that somewhere, something is still trapped, still calling, still angry you walked away. My name's Lauren. I'm 34 now. I live in a cramped apartment above a nail salon, and I still can't sleep in a cabin without checking every closet, crawling space, and empty room 3 times. People think that's funny until they see how serious I am about it. I'm not scared of forests. I'm not scared of being alone. I'm scared of thinking a place is empty when it isn't. This happened 10 years ago, almost to the day. I was 24, driving from Boise to visit a friend in Montana. It was supposed to be a cheap, ugly little road trip, gas station coffee, bad motel, playlists on repeat. I checked the weather. Light snow, they said. Nothing serious. They were wrong. By the time I crossed into northern Idaho, the snow had turned into a full whiteout. The kind where your headlights just make things worse, catching the flakes and throwing them back in your face. The road turned from gray to a smeared, shifting white. My wipers couldn't keep up. The wind didn't sound like wind anymore. It howled around the car, high and low at the same time, like something circling that I should have stopped earlier. Checked into one of those sad little motor inns with buzzing signs. But I told myself I could push through. Just another hour. I kept thinking, you've driven in worse. I hadn't. The back road I took was technically a highway, but out there it was just 2 lanes cutting through black trees and drifts taller than my car. No other headlights, no taillights, just me, the dashboard glow, and the sound of the heater fighting a losing battle. The skid wasn't dramatic. That's what I remember most. It wasn't Hollywood. No screaming tires, no spinning camera moment that I hit a patch of ice on a curve. The steering wheel went light in my hands. The car drifted sideways, quiet and weirdly graceful. The snowbank rose up on my left like a white wall. Then, impact. A dull, heavy thud. My head snapped forward, seatbelt digging into my collarbone. Snow burst up over the windshield in a wave, streaking white across the glass. The engine coughed once, then cut out. For a second, all I heard was my own breathing, too loud in the sudden silence. Okay? I whispered. Okay, you're fine. I wasn't. But that's what you tell yourself because the alternative is falling apart. The headlights were still on, catching nothing but swirling flakes. I tried the ignition. The engine whined, then gave up. The gas gauge sat uncomfortably close to empty. My phone read no service like it was mocking me. The cold crept in fast. I could feel it leaking through the windows under the dash. My fingers went numb around the steering wheel. If I had known what was coming, I tell myself now, I would have stayed in that cold car and taken my chances. Instead, I decided to look for help. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes before I saw it. A light through the trees, further up the embankment. Faint, yellow, flickering. Not a car, not a town. A single, lonely square of light, high up and steady against the storm. At first I thought I was imagining it. I wiped my sleeve across the window. It was still there, stabbing through the snow like an eye. A house. A cabin. Something. Leaving the car felt like climbing out of a lifeboat into the ocean. The wind hit me like a wall, slamming icy needles into my cheeks, ripping the warmth off my skin. The air smelled like metal and pine, clean and sharp and deadly cold. I grabbed my bag out of habit, then dropped it. I needed my hands free. My boots sank almost to the ankle in the powder, then hit something hard and slick underneath. Each step up the embankment was a guess. Snow packed into the tops of my boots, burning my ankles. The trees closed around me fast, dark trunks looming out of white. Branches brushed my coat, dumped snow down my collar. The wind roared in the canopy, but down on the ground it felt muffled, like the forest was swallowing the sound. The light grew brighter as I stumbled toward it, weaving between trees. It came from a single window in a small, dark shape tucked into the hillside. A cabin, hunting cabin, by the look of it. Rough-hewn logs, pitched roof sagging a little under the weight of snow, stone chimney coughing out a thin ribbon of smoke that tore sideways in the wind. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant warmth. Warmth meant not freezing to death in a dead car on a forgotten road. I should have listened to the part of me that started whispering. Even then, this is too convenient. This is wrong. I didn't. I just climbed the creaking wooden steps and banged on the door with a numb fist. Hello? My voice vanished into the storm. Hello? Is anyone in there? My car went off the road. I just need to call someone. No answer. No footsteps. Just the wind gnawing at the walls that I tried the handle. The door opened. Warmth hit me first. A soft, enveloping heat that smelled like wood smoke and something else. Old dust, maybe. Dry wood. The air inside was thick and still, like a room that hadn't been opened in a very long time that I stepped in, shivering. The cabin was one big room on the ground floor, wooden planks underfoot, scuffed and stained. A stone fireplace on the far wall, flames licking lazily at a stack of logs. A single armchair sat crooked in front of it, faded fabric sagging but not torn. Open shelves lined one wall, empty except for a cracked mug and a couple of old, rusted tins. Everything had that gray, untouched look, like a museum set. Dust lay on every surface, soft and even. No plates, no food, no boots by the door, no coat on the hooks. But the fire was fresh, bright orange, living. That should have been my first warning that I stood there, dripping snow onto the floor, and felt something inside me unclench at the heat on my face. My jeans started to thaw, damp patches turning lukewarm against my skin. I could smell the sap in the burning wood, hear the soft snap and hiss of sap pockets bursting. "Hello," I called again, softer now. "Is anyone here?" Nothing. No creak of bed springs, no mutter of a voice, no shuffle of slippers on planks. Just the fire and the wind, and my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I stepped further in. The floorboards groaned under my weight in that old building way, complaining but not giving. Up close, the armchair's fabric smelled faintly of dust and old smoke. I brushed my fingers along its armrest. They came away great. No one had sat there in months, so who lit the fire? A narrow staircase hugged the far wall, leading up to a small loft. I could just make out a railing up there, the suggestion of a bed shape. "Hello?" I tried once more, raising my voice toward the ceiling. "My car crashed. I need to warm up and then I'll go. I'm not here to steal anything." Silence. I told myself very firmly that the cabin was empty. Someone must have been here earlier, started a fire, then left. Maybe to check traps, maybe to get supplies. People did that, right? You didn't babysit a fire every second. My hands were shaking, whether from cold or adrenaline. I couldn't tell. I shut the door, slid the simple bolt into place, and leaned my back against it. The wood was cold against my spine, solid. I should have listened to the pressure between my shoulder blades, that prickling sense of being watched from behind even when there was nothing there. Instead, I moved closer to the fire. The heat felt almost greasy after the clean cold outside, heavy and close, wrapping around me. My clothes started to steam a little. The smell of damp fabric and thawing wool mixed with the sharper scent of burning resin. I dragged the armchair a few inches closer to the hearth and sat, chest still tight, ears straining for any sound from outside. The storm howled and rattled the small windows in their frames. Snow tapped the glass like fingers. I checked my phone again. No signal. No surprise. For a while, I just sat there, hands out toward the flames, watching the logs crack and settle. My eyes burned from the smoke. My skin prickled from the heat. Little by little, the shaking eased. That's when the feeling started. It wasn't a noise at first. It was weight, like someone had stepped into the room behind me without making a sound. Not close, not touching, just there, standing, watching. The back of my neck tightened. The tiny hairs along my arms rose under my sleeves. Heat from the fire washed over my face, but a thin line of cold traced down my spine, like the trail of a fingertip. Cabins creak, I told myself. Old places have presence. That's all this is. You're tired. You spun off the road. You're in shock. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. The air felt wrong, heavy, like the room was crowded even though it was just me and that empty chair and the fire. I tilted my head, listening. Under the wind and the pop of burning logs, I thought I heard something else. Faint, above me, a soft, dragging sound, like bare feet shifting on old wood. I held my breath. Silence. Then, very clearly, a creak. One board, up in the loft. Then another. Heel toe. Slow footsteps, deliberate, paced. Not the random creak of settling wood. Not the wind. Weight moving across floorboards directly above me. Every muscle in my body went rigid. My fingers dug into the worn fabric of the chair. The room suddenly felt too small, the ceiling too low. The fire's warmth turned suffocating. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I listened. The steps made their way from one end of the loft to the other. The boards complained under each shift. 1, 2, 3, then a pause, then 3 more, in a slow, measured rhythm. Someone was up there. "Hello," I called before I could stop myself. My voice sounded thin and wrong in the thick air. I'm sorry if I'm intruding. My car." The steps stopped. Right above where I sat, the silence that followed was worse than the footsteps. It pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating, as if the cabin itself were holding its breath. For a long moment, nothing moved. The only sound was the log in the fire collapsing inward with a soft hiss, sending up a spray of sparks that I considered getting up, climbing those stairs, seeing who or what was up there. But my legs wouldn't respond. Fear pinned me to the armchair like another body. Minutes crawled. My eyes burned. I stared at the flames until they blurred. At some point, the exhaustion and the heat blurred into a fog in my head. The adrenaline crash hit hard. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember snapping awake. My neck ached from the angle I'd slumped in. My left arm had gone numb, tingling painfully as blood returned. The fire was mostly embers now, glowing a dull, sullen red. The cabin was colder, the air thinner and sharper. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then everything rushed back in. Storm, crash, cabin, footsteps. I jerked upright, heart kicking. The light outside had changed. Pale gray seeped through the window. Morning. I was alive. The silence in the cabin was different now. Looser. The pressure in the air had shifted. Not gone. Just thinner. I stood on stiff legs, joints complaining, and turned in a slow circle, scanning the room. Empty. I told myself I'd imagined the footsteps. That shock and fear had turned wind noise into something else. That no one had been here but me. I knew I was lying. A sliver of sunlight made it through a gap in the curtains and stretched across the floor. A narrow, bright path in the dust-heavy air. That's when I saw them. Wet footprints. They started at the bottom of the stairs, where the first step met the cabin floor. Bare feet. Long, narrow. Toes splayed. Each print glistened faintly in the morning light. A dark, damp patch on the wood. They came down from the second floor, point one after another, right up behind the armchair I'd slept in. The last print was just inches from where my head had been. The wood beyond that last mark was dry. No exit trail. No prints back up the stairs. Nothing leading to the door. Just that single line of damp, human-shaped impressions that stopped once they were standing directly behind me, watching me sleep. My stomach lurched. The room tilted. For a second, I thought I was going to black out. A bitter, metallic taste flooded my mouth. I don't remember making a conscious decision to leave. One moment I was staring at that last footprint. The next I was snatching my keys off the floor, fumbling the bolt, and yanking the door open. The cold outside was a slap, but it was clean. Honest. The air scraped my lungs raw, but it didn't feel occupied. My car was half buried in snow when I reached it, but it started on the third try. I drove until the trees thinned, until my phone beeped back to life, until cell towers and ugly billboards rose out of the white. I never called anyone about the cabin. I never asked who owned it or if anyone had died there. Part of me is afraid I'll find out there is no cabin where I remember one. Part of me is afraid I'll find out exactly who walked down those stairs to stand over me in the dark. Now, every time I stay in a rental, those cute, cozy cabin getaway places my friends love so much, I do the same ritual. I check every room, every closet, under every bed, behind shower curtains. I open attic doors and stare up into dust. And at night, when the heaters click off and the wooden walls shift and whisper, I lie there listening, waiting for that slow rhythm above me. Heel toe. If you ever spin off a road in the middle of nowhere and see a warm light in a cabin that looks like it hasn't been touched in months, ask yourself who lit that fire. And if you decide to go in anyway, like I did, do one thing for me. Don't sleep in the chair with your back to the stairs. I'm Jake. I'm 43 now, and I've been driving long haul since I was 21. I've hauled everything from frozen beef to Christmas trees, crossed more states than I can remember, and slept in more parking lots than beds. I've seen pileups, suicides on overpasses, drunk idiots playing chicken with semis. You get numb to a lot of things out here, but I haven't gotten numb to winter nights. Not after what happened on Highway 2 in northern Montana. Even now, when the temperature drops and the snow starts creeping over the asphalt, I catch myself checking my mirrors every 10 seconds, waiting to see that shape again. That's why I'm telling this. Not because I want to, because if I don't talk about it, it feels like it starts to come back. This was about 5 winters ago. I was 38, hauling insulation panels out of Spokane, headed east. Easy run on paper, light load, familiar route, delivery window tight but doable. It was one of those nights where the world feels hollowed out. No music, just the hum of the tires and the low whine of the heater fan that never quite got warm enough. The sky was black, no moon, just that thing that happens in the north where the snow seems to glow on its own. I remember the smell inside the cab. Stale coffee, old fries from a bag on the passenger seat, a hint of Windex from cleaning the windshield at the last stop. Normal, comfortable, mine. Outside? Just cold. The kind of cold you feel in your teeth. It was close to 2 in the morning when I saw the footprints that I was coming around a long, slow curve, high beams cutting through the drift that kept sliding over the road like torn sheets. That's when my lights caught a set of tracks on the right shoulder. Not animal. Too long, too straight. Human boots. One single trail, hugging the edge of the highway. No car pulled over. No tire tracks in the snow. No emergency flares. Just neat, evenly spaced footprints, marching along the shoulder and then veering off into the dark where my lights couldn't reach. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone got dropped off. Maybe a car had been there earlier before the snow covered the tracks. But something in my gut tightened. That was the first sign something was wrong. I should have listened to that feeling. I kept rolling. The heater clicked, then whined louder. I turned the radio on low, just to have something human in the cab with me. Some late-night host mumbling about politics 3 states away. For a while, it was just me, the road, and the rhythm of white lines. But that tightness in my chest didn't go away. I kept checking my mirrors. Not for cops. Not for other rigs. For those footprints. About 15 minutes later, the CB crackled, then went dead again. No chatter. Just static like whispering that never formed words. I shifted my weight, rolled my shoulders, trying to shake off the nerves. I told myself I was tired. That was all. Just fatigue playing tricks that I wasn't. It started as a shadow in the corner of my eye. Out on the right side, past the edge of the headlight beam, something dark moved with me. I thought it was a tree line at first or a fence. But we were in open country. Just snow and brush and the occasional mile marker. I stared straight ahead, but my peripheral vision kept catching it. Long, narrow, too tall to be a person, too thin to be a signpost. It didn't bob like someone walking, didn't break like branches. It just glided. I checked my speed. 52. I was taking it careful because of the ice patches. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. I leaned forward and risked a real look to the right. Not turning my head fully, just shifting my eyes. My fingers tightened on the wheel, the vinyl biting into my palm. Something was pacing me. I couldn't see it clearly. Just a darker shape against the snow, where nothing should have been. Every time the headlights swung around a curve, the shadow stretched and warped on the drifts, like it was made out of the same darkness that filled the sky. For a few seconds, I convinced myself it was just the trailer shadow. Some weird angle. Some optical illusion. I mean, if you stare out into a black field long enough, your brain starts drawing ghosts. Then I heard it. A scraping sound on the right side of the trailer. Soft at first. A long, thin drag, like someone running a stick or nails along sheet metal. Pause. My skin went cold under my jacket. I eased my foot off the accelerator and watched the speedometer sag to 45. The scraping slowed. But it didn't fall behind. It stayed right there beside me. That's when my breathing changed. I heard it inside the cab, too loud in the small space. Shorter, faster. The heater, the engine, the road noise. They all faded behind that stupid, scraping sound. I rolled the window down a crack. The cold punched in immediately, turning the air sharp and metallic. I could smell wet asphalt, the faint tang of antifreeze, and under it, something else. Like old wood left in the rain too long. mildew and rot, and under all that, something faint and sickly sweet, like spoiled meat. The scrape came again, clearer with the window cracked that it was on the metal. On my rig, I snapped the window up and locked the doors, even though that made no sense. Whatever could walk 50 miles an hour through snow wasn't going to be bothered by a Freightliner door lock. I told myself I was going to make it to the next rest area. That was it. Just a few more miles. Get to the lights, get around people, check the trailer. Simple plan. Logical. I clung to it like a life raft. When the green reflective sign finally appeared out of the dark, rest area 2 miles, I felt my muscles actually ache from how tense they'd been. I swallowed, flexed my fingers on the wheel, and forced my eyes to stay forward. If I didn't look, maybe it would stop. Maybe it would fade. Instead, the scraping got louder. Now it wasn't just a drag. It was more like tapping mixed in. A staccato rhythm, like fingers drumming impatiently on a table. Tap, tap, tap. Scrape. Tap. Scrape. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Every bump in the road felt amplified, the cab vibrating like it was shivering along with me. The off-ramp came up on the right, the little triangle of snow between lanes dirty from plows. I took it too fast, tires crunching over ice, the trailer swaying just enough to make my stomach drop. As soon as I turned onto the ramp, the shadow was gone. Just gone. No more scraping, no more tapping, only the normal sounds. Engine hum, fan whine, my own ragged breathing. The rest area came into view, yellow sodium lights turning the snow into a weird, dirty orange. There were 2 other rigs and a beat-up pickup parked under the lamps. Safety, people, civilization. I pulled into a spot near the far end, killed my lights, and sat there for a second, listening to the engine idle. Everything was normal. Too normal that I told myself I'd imagined it. That my brain had turned the wind over the trailer into something else. That the shadow was just my own trailer sliding across snowbanks. I almost put it in park and decided to sleep right there. Instead, I grabbed my flashlight. Outside, the cold hit like a physical slap. My nostrils stung, the hairs inside my nose freezing on contact. The air smelled of diesel, exhaust, and that weird burnt ice smell you only get in truck stops in winter. Snow crunched under my boots as I walked around the front of the truck, the beam of the flashlight cutting through the falling flakes. My breath came out in white bursts, drifting and breaking under the light. I turned down the passenger side, running the beam along the length of the trailer. That's when I saw them. Footprints. They started near the front, right by the passenger door. A single trail, just like on the highway shoulder. Boots. Deep, crisp impressions in the snow that hadn't been there when I pulled in. I would have seen them. I know I would have seen them. They hugged the side of the truck, each one placed carefully, almost politely, as if whoever made them didn't want to stray too far from the metal. They went the entire length of the trailer, and then curved around the back, slowly, deliberately, a perfect semicircle, like someone had taken a tape measure and drawn it. I followed them with the light, my throat dry, the taste of metal and fear on my tongue. My fingers were numb around the flashlight, but not from the cold. Something in those tracks was wrong. They weren't spaced like normal walking, too even, too measured, like whatever made them didn't tire, didn't stumble, didn't shift its weight. I turned the corner at the back of the trailer and nearly dropped the light. The prints continued along the driver's side. All the way back. Whoever or whatever had walked alongside my truck on the highway had taken a slow, patient lap around it while I sat inside, trying to convince myself I was safe. I swung the beam up and down the trailer, looking for scratches where I'd heard the scraping. The metal gleamed under the frost. Clean. No marks. No dents. Nothing to prove I wasn't losing my mind. Just those footprints. They ended about halfway down the driver's side. Just stopped. One last print. Toes pointed toward the truck. And then nothing. No trail leading away. No jumps. No scuffs. Just untouched snow beyond that final impression. Like it had stepped into the side of the trailer and vanished. I stood there, my breath burning in my lungs, listening. The rest area was almost silent. Far off, someone slammed a cab door, the sound muffled. A generator hummed somewhere, a distant semi downshifted back on the highway. And yet, under all that, I thought I heard it again. Tap. From inside the trailer. Just once. So faint I could have imagined it. I didn't open those doors. Couldn't. I backed away slowly, heels sinking into the snow, keeping the light on that last footprint until I was at the cab. Then I scrambled up like a kid convinced something was about to grab my ankles. I locked the doors, killed the engine, and sat there in the dark cab, wrapped in my jacket, listening. The silence inside was suffocating. Warm but too small, too close. Every creak of the rig settling sounded like a hand on metal. I didn't sleep. Not that night. Not really. In the morning, when the gray light seeped through the windshield, I finally worked up the nerve to check again. The plows had come through, pushing slush and snow into dirty ridges. The footprints were gone. Just tire tracks, salt, and churned up ice. I delivered the load. Nobody asked why I looked like I'd been awake for a week. I didn't tell anyone. How do you explain that something walked beside your truck at 50 miles an hour and then took a lazy stroll around your rig like it was window shopping? I changed after that. I avoid that stretch in winter if I can. When I can't, I white-knuckle it, mirrors flicking constantly. I keep the radio low, just enough to remind myself there are still human voices somewhere out there. And some nights, if the road is empty and the snow is flattening the world, I swear I hear it again. That scraping. That soft, impatient tapping on metal, just out of sight. I know what you're thinking. Exhaustion, stress, some weird pattern in the snow. I've told myself all of that 100 times. It doesn't change one thing. Whatever walked beside my truck that night knew exactly where I was, kept pace without trying. It came all the way into that rest area, circled me, and then stopped, like it had finally gotten a good look. Sometimes on the coldest nights, when I'm parked at some lonely little pullout, I'll wake up without knowing why. The cab will be silent. The air will feel wrong, too still, too heavy. And I'll lie there, holding my breath, staring at the ceiling. That's when I hear it. Just once. Tap. Somewhere along the trailer. Like it's reminding me. Like it's letting me know it hasn't forgotten the guy who tried to outrun it on Highway 2. My name's Eric. I'm 41 now. I rent a second-floor apartment over a strip mall in Duluth, and I sleep with earplugs in every winter. Not because of the neighbors. Not because of traffic. Because of snowplows. Most people hear that scraping blade sound and think, good, roads are getting cleared. I hear it and my whole body goes tight. My hands sweat. My heart starts racing like it's trying to get ahead of something. I used to live outside of town, on a rural road that didn't even have a name on Google Maps. Just a mile and a half of gravel and washboard, lined with bare trees and old fence posts leaning at strange angles. Back then, I liked the silence. The feeling of owning a little pocket of nowhere. No neighbors peeking through blinds. No sirens. Just wind through branches and the occasional coyote yipping in the distance. Winters there were brutal. The kind that turned the world into one solid mass of white and black, snow and tree. Plows came through when they could, but there were nights where the drifts swallowed fences and the road disappeared completely. That night, I remember it too clearly, the way I remember the sound of metal on asphalt. If I had known what was coming, I would have called in sick and slept on the break room couch. I was working second shift in town, stocking and doing maintenance at a warehouse. Long, boring nights, fluorescent lights humming, forklifts beeping. That day had already been bad. Arguing with my ex over text, supervisor riding my ass about quotas, one of my coworkers talking about a bad wreck on County 12 where a car had been rear-ended in a whiteout. Plow driver never even saw him, he'd said, shaking his head. Just pushed him 50 yards before he realized he wasn't pushing snow. That stuck with me more than it should have. By the time my shift ended, it was close to 11:30 p.m. The storm that was supposed to hit at midnight had come early. Fat flakes slammed sideways against the warehouse's sodium lights, turning the parking lot into a swirling tunneled my car was one of only 3 left. A dull blue sedan, salt-eaten and coughing every time I turned the key. The windshield was already half buried. I scraped it with my glove because I'd lost my scraper weeks before and never replaced it. That should have been my first warning. The way I kept putting off little things. New wiper blades. A scraper. Listening to that tiny voice in my head that said, "Stay in town tonight," that I pulled out onto the main road and the snow swallowed me almost immediately. My headlights hit a wall of white, the high beams making it worse, catching flakes like thousands of tiny, attacking insects. I dropped them back down and hunched over the wheel, my world reduced to the faint suggestion of lines and the red glow of my dashboard. For the first 10 minutes, it was just me and the storm. Radio off, wipers thudding dull rhythms, heater trying and failing to outrun the cold seeping in through every seam. Then I saw the lights in my rearview point, two dull yellow orbs, far back at first, higher than car headlights, too low to be a truck's cab. They bobbed gently, then steadied. Snowplow, I thought, and felt a little bit of tension leave my shoulders. Someone else was out here, someone bigger than me. The lights grew closer. The faint outline of something large began to form behind me. A squat, hulking shape, taller than my car, wide across the front. The kind of plow they use out in the county, blade wider than both lanes. Good, I thought. He'll clear the way. But the plow didn't swing into the opposite lane to start cutting a path. It fell into line right behind me. Closer. Too close. I checked my speed. I was doing 35, maybe 40 in a 55. Any faster and the car felt like it wanted to slide. Still, the plow crept up, those yellow lights filling my rear view until they were almost all I could see. I could make out the blade now. Dark, heavy metal, crusted with packed snow, inches from my bumper. "Okay, man," I muttered, fingers tightening on the wheel. "Back off." I tapped my brakes lightly, just enough to flash my rear lights. The plow slowed, for half a second, then surged forward again until it was right back where it had been, practically kissing my trunk. The scraping started then. Not the faint hiss of tires on slush, but the distinct, grinding sound of a steel blade kissing bare asphalt. Long, drawn-out screeches that cut through the sound of the engine and lodged somewhere under my ribs that I should have listened to myself. Turned into the next driveway. Pulled off. Done anything but what I did. I told myself he was just impatient. Just trying to push me to go faster so he could do his route. I pressed the gas, nudging the car up to 45. The back wobbled once, twice, caught itself. My heart jumped into my throat. The plow matched me perfectly. Same distance, same pressure, same deafening scrape of metal along road. "Jesus," I whispered. The snow thickened, turning the world into a tunnel. My rearview mirror was just yellow light and shadow now. I couldn't make out any markings. No county logo, no number, just a blank, dirty front and a hulking blade. We kept going like that for miles. Every time I eased off, he did too. Every time I sped up, he was right there with me, never passing, never dropping back. As I got closer to my turnoff, the road narrowed. Trees crowded closer to the ditch. The snow on the shoulder was piled high, whipped into frozen waves by the wind. My gravel road appeared suddenly on the right. Nothing more than a dark break in the drift, marked by a bent, bullet-riddled sign that I put on my blinker out of reflex. The plow's lights flared brighter in my mirror, washing the inside of my car in dirty yellow. For a second, it felt like I was sitting in its mouth. I turned. The plow turned with me. Gravel crunched under my tires as I left the blacktop. The sound changed under the plow too. Blades striking loose stones now, throwing up sparks that died instantly in the snow. The engine behind me growled deeper, angrier. My road was just wide enough for 1.5 cars. Trees arched overhead, forming a sort of tunnel. The plow should have backed off. There was no room here. No reason for it to be following a nobody like me to the dead end. It didn't back off. It stayed right on my bumper. So close I couldn't see its blade anymore. Just the glare of its lights and the vague outline of that massive front. By the time I saw my driveway, my knuckles were white on the wheel. My shirt was sticking to my back with sweat. Even though the car was cold, I pulled in, tires slipping on the unplowed, packed snow. The little house came into view. Dark, one story, porch half buried. My porch light, which I'd left on, shone like a weak, lonely star. I put the car in park. The plow stopped at the mouth of my driveway. Just sat there. Engine idling in a low, uneven rumble that sounded almost like breathing. The blade hung slightly crooked now, snow dripping off the edge in dirty clumps. For a long moment, neither of us moved. My taillights glowed red onto the snow ahead of it. His headlights burned into my back window. I told myself it was fine. That he was waiting for me to get inside before he backed up. That it was some kind of courtesy. My instinct screamed that it wasn't. I killed the engine. The sudden silence inside the car rang in my ears. Outside, the plow's motor sounded even louder. A wet, industrial growl. I grabbed my bag, took a breath that did nothing to steady me, and opened my door. The cold slapped me, hard, stealing my first 3 words. "Hey!" I finally managed, stepping out into the glare of those yellow lights. Snowflakes stung my face like sand. "Hey, what's your problem, man?" The plow sat, hulking and wrong at the end of the drive. Up close, I could see how dirty it was. Layers of grime and old salt streaked down the sides, rust eating at the seams. The blade was battered, gouged, flecked with something dark. The cab windows were tinted, but I could make out shapes inside. A steering wheel, a seat, the vague line where a driver's shoulder should be. "Back off!" I shouted, boots crunching on the packed snow. "You nearly pushed me off the damn road." I got close enough to see properly through the windshield. There was no one in the driver's seat. The cab was emptied at no figure. No movement, just the big, blank seat, belt hanging loose, swaying slightly like someone had just climbed out. The engine revved. The whole truck shuddered, metal rattling against metal. The blade dipped a fraction, then lifted with a sharp squeal. The lights flickered, then steadied, burning into my eyes. My breath came out in huge white clouds. Under the smell of diesel, something else crawled into my nose. Wet metal, old oil, and underneath it all, a faint, sour rot, like damp fabric that had been left in a trunk too long. "Okay?" I whispered to myself. Okay. I took a step back toward my house, not wanting to turn my back fully on it. The plow's engine growled louder, then suddenly roared, like something had slammed the accelerator. The truck lunged forward and I flinched hard enough to almost drop my keys. But just as it jerked toward me, it swung sharply to the left, blade scraping along the edge of the road. Snow exploded out sideways in a dirty wave, peppering my legs. The sound of steel on packed gravel was an animal scream, high and grinding. Without a driver, without a visible hand on the wheel, the plow pulled away, crawling down the road at an even, measured pace. Its lights washed over my house, over the trees, then vanished behind the curtain of snow. The scraping faded with distance, but I stood there long after, heart hammering, fingers numb, watching the dark where it had gone. Eventually, I forced myself inside, locked the door, locked it twice, kicked off my boots and stood in the narrow entryway. Listening. The house felt wrong. Too quiet, too hollow. The fridge hummed. The furnace gave a low, sighing cough and clicked off. The wind pressed against the walls in uneven bursts that I went to the front window, nudged the curtain aside with one finger, and peered out. The road was empty. No lights, no shape, just snow swirling under the weak glow of my pole-mounted yard lamp. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was circling. Every small noise put my teeth on edge. A branch scraping the siding. The furnace kicking back on. A little tick-tick in the walls from the house adjusting to temperature. I made myself a cup of coffee I didn't drink. Left the TV on mute for company. Sat on the couch with the remote in my hand and the porch light glaring into the white. Sometime after 1 a.m., I started to hear it again. Faint at first. Distant. The scrape. Not constant. Not like a normal plow pass. This came in sections, long, shuddering drags, then silence. Then another drag. It sounded close. Too close. I killed the TV and stood in the middle of my living room, listening hard. The sound moved left to right, then right to left. The windows vibrated slightly with each pass. It wasn't on the road. It was around the house. I went from window to window, pulling the curtain back an inch, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear over it. Every time I looked, there was nothing but darkness and snow. But the sound never stopped. Scrape, 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 like a blade tracing slow, patient circles in the packed snow just beyond the walls at some point. I must have fallen asleep sitting up, because the next thing I remember is gray light leaking into the room. My neck was stiff, my back a knot. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed the whole thing. Then I saw the clock. 7:12 a.m. and the silence. The deep post-storm silence. No wind, no scraping, just the heavy stillness of a world smothered in snow. That I pushed myself to my feet, legs trembling, and walked to the front door. The cold that hit when I opened it was sharp enough to make my eyes water. The sky was a flat, pale white. Snow lay smooth and unbroken across the yard. Except for the tracks. Tire tracks. Deep, wide, the kind a heavy truck makes. They came off the road right up to my property line. And then they started circling. Around my house, 0.3 full loops. Perfect circles, pressed so evenly into the snow it looked like someone had drawn them with a compass. No tracks leaving. No tracks coming in from another angle. Just 3 complete revolutions around where I had been sitting. Watching. Waiting. My stomach turned. My hands started shaking so badly I had to brace myself on the doorframe to keep from falling. I called the county that afternoon. Asked, in what I hoped was a calm, casual tone, if any of their plows had been on my road around midnight. The dispatcher paused. "No routes out that way last night," she said. "Not at that time. We pulled everybody in early on account of visibility." "Why?" "No reason." I lied, staring out at the perfect, circling tracks. "Just saw one, that's all." A week later, a guy at work told me a story. How, 10 years back, a plow driver had gone off the bridge on the other side of my road in a storm. Bad visibility. Late night run he wasn't supposed to be on. They said he kept texting his wife that he'd be home soon, the guy said. Never made it. Some folks swear they still hear him running the route when the snow gets bad enough. I moved out of that house the next summer. Told everyone it was because of the commute. Because I wanted to be closer to town. Because the loneliness got to me. All of that was true. None of it was the real reason. Now, in the city, plows are just part of life. They come in packs. Flashing lights, backup beeps, blades angled. People sleep through them that I don't. Some nights, when the snow is coming down hard and the streets turn into slow rivers of slush, I lie awake and listen. I can tell the difference now. The normal pass on the main road. The little truck clearing the lot. And underneath it, sometimes, I'll hear another sound. A single blade and no backup beep. No flashing light painting the ceiling. Just that long, dragging scrape circling the block. Again and again. Last winter, during a blizzard, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. with my heart racing and my palms slick. The sound was right below my window. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I forced myself to look, to pull the blinds back the tiniest bit. The parking lot was empty. But right under my window, printed into the drift against the building, were the faint, wide impressions of tire tracks, curved. Almost circular if you live on a rural road and a plow with no markings ever settles in behind you. Pay attention. If it follows you off the main road, into your driveway, don't get out. Don't go yell at it. Don't pretend it's just a guy doing his job. Some of them are. Some of them aren't. And some of them are still looking for the way home they never got. My name's Ryan. I'm 29 now. I work IT for a school district in the Midwest, and I drive everywhere, even when it makes no sense. People joke about it. You seriously drove 6 blocks instead of taking the bus? Lazy. They don't know that every time I pass a glass bus shelter in winter, I have to fight the urge to look away. Or that if I see someone sitting inside with their hood up, I'll cross the street just to avoid walking past. I wasn't always like that. Back then I was 18, broke, and living on the far edge of the city with my mom. I counted change for rides, timed my life around bus schedules, and measured my winters in how numb my fingers got between our front door and the nearest stop. I remember this night so clearly that I can tell you the exact feeling of the wind on my skin. The way it grabbed the heat out of your lungs the second you stepped outside. The way the air didn't just feel cold. It felt sharp, like breathing in ground glass. It was late January. I just picked up extra hours at a grocery store stocking shelves. We were closing at 11. But the night manager kept us until almost midnight doing inventory because he didn't want to come in on Sunday. My feet hurt. My back ached. My hands smelled like cardboard dust and cheap floor cleaner. The weather report had said wind chill advisory, which is Midwest speak for the air wants to kill you, but you still have to show up to work. I pulled my too-thin jacket tighter and wrapped my scarf twice around my neck, but it didn't matter. The cold cut right through. Our nearest bus stop was 3 blocks away. The snow on the sidewalks had been trampled and refrozen so many times it had turned into uneven glass. A mix of salt, ice, and dirt that crunched under my boots. The streetlights hummed, casting that sickly orange glow on everything. The wind funneled between houses and hit me in gusts that made my eyes water. Halfway there, my ears went from burning to numb. My breath came out in thick, white clouds that instantly tore away. I kept my head down and counted steps. When the shelter finally came into view, 4 glass panels and a bench under a flat metal roof, it looked like salvation. A thin, ugly kind of salvation, but still I saw him before I registered what I was seeing. Someone was already inside. He sat hunched at the far end of the bench, back to the glass, hood pulled low so I couldn't see his face. Dark coat, too big in the shoulders, the hem dusted with frozen slush. His hands hung loosely between his knees, fingers bare and raw-looking even from a distance that I slowed for half a second, instinctively wanting to avoid anyone in that kind of isolated spot. Then a gust hit me so hard it stole my breath, and survival overrode nerves that I stepped into the shelter. The change in sound hit me first. Outside, the wind howled and hissed and bit at my clothes. Inside the shelter, it became a muffled roar, like someone had put a pillow over the city's mouth. It was still freezing, my breath still fogged, but the glass cut the edge off. The man didn't move when I came in, didn't shift, didn't glance over, didn't do any of the normal human things people do when another body enters their space. Most people, even if they're trying to ignore you, will do that quick, darting eye flick. He didn't. He was angled slightly away, but I could see the corner of his mouth, the curve of his cheek under the hood. His skin looked wrong, not just pale, dull, like old wax. I sat as far from him as I could on the bench, backpack on my lap, hands jammed between my knees. The plastic seat was icy through my jeans. The shelter smelled like wet concrete, old cigarette smoke, and under it, something else. That other smell came in slow, faint at first, then stronger. Wet iron, old soil. Not fresh dirt, not the clean loam smell you get after rain. This was thick and stale, like earth that had been turned over after being left alone for a long time. Like something buried. I tried to breathe shallow so I wouldn't taste it. I snuck a sideways look at him. His clothes were off. The style was wrong. The coat looked like something from a decade or two earlier. Heavy wool, double-breasted, with those big dark buttons you don't see much anymore. His jeans were too short at the ankles, showing a sliver of gray sock above boots that were scuffed to hell. Not modern scuffs, not I've been working construction. More like the leather itself had dried and cracked from years of freeze-thaw. Freeze-thaw. His hands were the worst. No gloves. Just bare skin in that kind of cold. The knuckles were split and red, the creases filled with something dark. Not blood, or if it was old. His nails were discolored, a gray yellow, with dirt packed underneath. I watched for his breath. Nothing. My own came out in big, visible clouds in front of my face. From this close, I should have seen his. Even a little wisp. Even a trace where the hood shadow ended. There was nothing. I told myself he was just angled away. That the wind might be blowing his breath sideways. That I was overthinking it because I was tired and scared and 18, and this was not where I wanted to die of cold. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. The timetable was taped crooked to the glass beside me, the edges curled and stained. The bus was due in 8 minutes. 8 minutes in that freezing little box with him felt like a very long time. We sat in silence. Outside, the wind gusted, blowing loose snow across the frozen street in low, shifting sheets. A car passed, tires hissing on ice, headlights briefly painting the shelter. When they swept over him, I saw his profile for a second. His eyes were open, not relaxed, not half closed, not staring at his hands, open, staring straight ahead at nothing. The glass panel behind him began to frost. It started near the bottom, a thin white film spreading out in delicate, branching patterns. At first I thought it was just the temperature difference, the warmth of our bodies against the night. But it wasn't behind me. The panel at my back stayed clear, the world outside still visible through it. Only the glass behind him was frosting over. The whiteness climbed, tendrils of ice racing up and out, tracing over the surface like someone drawing with an invisible pen. The edges of his hood blurred against the pale film that I watched, hypnotized. As his outline became a dark shadow in a white haze, the smell of wet iron got stronger. It sat on my tongue like I'd been sucking a penny. My stomach rolled. "Dude, you okay?" I heard myself say, the words thin and shaky in the cramped space. He didn't react. Not a flinch. Not a twitch. I listened for his breathing. I heard the wind. A distant siren, far out in the city. The faint buzz of a street lamp. I did not hear air moving in or out of his lungs. My fingers started to tingle. Not just from cold. That buzzing, vibrating numbness you get when adrenaline slams through your system. My heart thudded too loud. The shelter felt smaller. The roof lower. I glanced down at the floor. Salt-gritted concrete. Old gum flattened into dark coins. Muddy footprints tracked in half-moons toward the door. Mine came in from the sidewalk. Wet, dark impressions melting into dampness. His side of the shelter was white and no fresh prints leading in. No wet marks where boots should have tracked snow across the floor. Just dust and old dirt that matched the color under his nails. The frost behind him thickened, turning opaque. Tiny crystals bloomed outward in a perfect halo. It crept around the edges of the panel, leaving only a jagged, man-shaped gap at his silhouette that I should have left. Walked back to the store, called my mom and begged a ride. I stayed, muscles locked, eyes fixed on the dark shape next to me. A sound slipped into the shelter then. Soft, wet, like someone shifting weight in heavy, damp clothes. He turned his head. Not all the way toward me. Just enough that I could see more of his face under the hood. His skin had that same waxy, over-chilled look, tinged faintly gray-blue. His lips were cracked. There was something on his cheekbone, a faint line, like dried mud or something else left there by time. His eyes slid past me, unfocused, staring through the glass at the street. Or maybe at something in the street I couldn't see. The frost climbed higher, reaching the top of the panel behind him with a final, delicate crackle. The air inside the shelter dropped a few more degrees. I felt it physically, like someone had opened a freezer door behind my spine. He spoke then. His voice was low and rough, like he hadn't used it in a long time, like the words were scraping their way past something in his throat. "Route," he murmured. "You waiting Route 16? My mouth was dry. "Yeah," I managed. 16. He nodded once. The movement was slow, almost mechanical. "Missed it," he whispered. "Cold night." There was a long pause. I swallowed hard, throat clicking. "When?" I asked before I could stop myself. "When did you miss it?" His lips twitched. Not a smile. More like a memory passing under the skin. "Long time," he said. The words were barely sound. Light didn't stop. Didn't see me. My chest clenched. Stories surfaced in my head. Things you hear in passing, half ignored. A kid found frozen near a stop. A guy who'd wandered home drunk and never made it. If I had known then what I know now, I would have shut up. I would have stared at the timetable and kept my questions to myself. Instead, I said, "Where were you headed?" His head shifted again. This time the hood slipped back just a little. I saw enough. One ear, white and rimmed with a faint, frostbitten gray. A stretch of hair stuck to his temple in stiff, frozen clumps. Skin that looked pitted, like someone had pressed something hard against it for a long time. "Home," he said, a single word, loaded with emptiness. Somewhere out on the route, in the direction he was looking, a bus engine growled. The headlights appeared down the block, two bright orbs cutting through the blowing snow. The shelter filled with reflected light, making his hood a deeper shadow. The bus pulled up, brakes exhaling a long, hissing sigh that fogged the air. The doors folded open with a mechanical wheeze. I shot to my feet so fast my vision tunneled for a second. My legs felt rubbery, like they belonged to someone else. "Thank you," I blurted, though I didn't know who I was thanking, and stumbled out into the freezing air. The driver looked at me with that mix of boredom and mild curiosity you get on late routes. Middle-aged guy, gray mustache, big parka. I flashed my pass with shaking hands and moved toward the back, wanting to get away from the doors, from the shelter, from him. Just before I stepped past the driver, he touched my sleeve. "You get caught in that wind, kid?" he asked. "You're white as a sheet." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just cold." He glanced past me, out toward the shelter. "Was it just you out there?" he said. The question sliced right through the fog in my brain. "No," I said. "There was someone in the shelter, sitting on the bench." His brow furrowed. He leaned to peer out the windshield. The bus doors were still open. The glass panels of the shelter stood there, lit by the street lamp. Empty. No hunched figure. No dark coat. Just my lonely shape reflected faintly in the nearest pane. "I didn't see anybody," the driver said quietly. "Just you." My mouth went dry. "He was right there," I insisted, "sitting in the corner. Hood up." The driver watched me for a beat longer than was comfortable. Then he just shook his head like he'd decided this wasn't worth pushing. "Take a seat," he said. "We're running behind." I stumbled to the back and dropped into a seat. My heart was still punching at my ribs. The heater blasted lukewarm air that smelled like dust and old rubber. But I couldn't stop shivering as the bus pulled away. I couldn't help it. I turned to look out the side window. We passed the shelter slowly. For a second, the angle was just right. The street lamp glare shifted. The reflection cleared. He was still there, sitting exactly where he'd been, hunched, hood up, hands dangling between his knees. The wind blew straight through the open sides of the shelter, hard enough to drive snow in sideways, but none of it seemed to touch him. Curved around, like water around a rock in a stream, his head turned. Not much, just enough. Our eyes met through the glass and the moving snow. His were dark, too dark, no shine, no light reflection, just bottomless, exhausted pits. The bus rolled on, breaking the line of sight. The shelter vanished behind a curtain of swirling white. I moved out of that neighborhood a few years later. Got a car. Promised myself it was because of better opportunities, more space, adult life. But I know the truth that I still won't stand in a bus shelter in winter. If I have to take public transit, I'll pace the sidewalk until the bus arrives. Face numb, ears burning. I'd rather take my chances with frostbite than share that thin glass box with anyone who doesn't breathe. It's been over a decade. But on nights when the wind chill drops and the city feels hollowed out, I'll hear it again. The hiss of brakes, the sigh of doors, the faint buzz of a shelter's fluorescent light. Sometimes, when I'm driving past an empty stop in a storm, I'll catch a glimpse in my peripheral vision. A hunched shape, a dark hood, a pair of hands too raw for this world that I don't look directly anymore. I'm afraid if I do, he'll finally recognize me as the kid who got on a bus he never did. The worst part? Our old route changed numbers, got rerouted, all of that. But the stop is still there. Same glass, same metal roof, same patch of sidewalk where he sat, waiting for a bus that never stopped. Some nights I get this feeling, right before I fall asleep, like I'm sitting on that bench again, cold seeping into my bones, the smell of wet iron thick in my nose, and over the howl of the wind, I hear a low voice behind me. "Did you see me this time?" If you ever find yourself in a frozen shelter with someone who doesn't look up, doesn't breathe, and frosts the glass behind them but not behind you, don't sit down. Don't wait. Don't tell yourself you're being dramatic. Because some people are waiting for a bus, and some are waiting for someone who'll finally see them. My name's Mark. I'm 32 now, live in a cramped apartment over a bakery in a city that barely gets real snow, and I still wake up some nights absolutely sure I can hear it again. That sound. Crunch, pause, crunch. You never forget the sound of footsteps in snow when you know they're not supposed to be there. Back then, my world was a 2-story house on the edge of a small town, a strip of woods out back, and my little brother, Dylan, who followed me everywhere. I was 10. He was 8. Our lives were simple. School, cartoons, sledding, arguing over who got the last packet of hot chocolate. And then that snowstorm hit that they'd been talking about it for days. Once in a decade, the weatherman said. My mom stocked up on groceries and candles. My dad laughed it off, said, "It's just snow," and waited until the last minute to bring in firewood. When school called the night before and announced closures, we lost our minds. No class, no homework, just snowed. If I had known what that day was going to turn into, I would have prayed for school. The storm started before dawn, thick, heavy flakes dropping straight down like the sky was spilling stuffing. By the time we tumbled out of bed, the world outside our windows was a blank page. No street, no driveway, no fence, just white swallowing everything. Our house backed right onto the woods. In summer, you could barely see through the trees. In winter, all those trunks stood exposed, black lines in a white blur. Mom bundled us up until we could barely move. Layers on layers, scarves scratchy against our necks, gloves stiff. When she opened the back door, the cold rushed in with a smell like metal and clean ice. It hurt to breathe. We didn't care. We launched ourselves into it. The snow came up to our shins in the yard, higher in drifts. Every step made that satisfying compacting sound, a soft crunch you could feel through your boots. Our breath puffed out in clouds. The air was so cold my nose hairs froze. I remember that weird sting when I inhaled. We spent the whole morning building forts, tunneling into the side of a drift by the fence, throwing lopsided snowballs. Dylan kept falling and laughing with that high, breathless giggle he had when he was too excited. Nothing felt wrong then. It was just a perfect snow day. We went in around noon when we couldn't feel our toes. Mom's kitchen smelled like tomato soup and grilled cheese. Our wet things steamed on hooks by the door. Our hair dripped melting snow onto the linoleum. I should have paid more attention when Dad looked out the back window over his coffee, his brow creasing just slightly. "That wind's picking up," he muttered. "Don't go near the woods this afternoon." We promised. We meant it, mostly. But kids' promises stretch under the right kind of temptation. By late afternoon, the light outside had turned that strange blue-gray you only see in winter. The storm had eased, but everything was muffled, like the world had thick walls now. "Want to see how deep it is by the trees?" Dylan asked, pressing his face to the glass. I should have said no. Instead, I said, "Just the yard. We stay in the yard." We wrestled back into our gear, the fabric still damp at the edges, smelling faintly of wet wool and kid sweat, and stepped out again. The air felt different, colder but also heavier. The silence settled on my shoulders. No plows yet, no cars, no distant voices, just the whisper of snow settling and the faint creak of tree branches shifting under the weight. Our footprints from the morning had blurred but were still there, shallow dents leading from the door to the forts and back. We climbed on top of one drift and pretended it was a castle. "Look," Dylan said suddenly. He was pointing toward the far corner of the yard, where the tree line started. His mitten shook. At first, I didn't see it. Just the fence half buried, the woods dark and dense behind it. Then my eyes adjusted. Footprints. Not ours. Ours were messy, close together, small. These were different. Long strides, deep impressions. Each print sunk farther down than ours had, even though whoever made them should have hit the same hard-packed layer we had. They started at the edge of the trees, where the first line of trunks broke the white. They came out of the woods, straight as if someone had walked with their eyes locked on our house. They crossed the yard without wavering, past the sagging bird feeder, past the half-built snow fort, straight to our back door. A single line of them. No second set alongside, no stagger, no drag marks, just a purposeful walk from the trees to our home. "Those aren't ours," Dylan said quietly. "I know," I said. We hadn't been near the trees. We hadn't come from that direction. My stomach tightened. "Maybe Dad," he whispered. Dad worked at a factory across town. His car wasn't in the driveway. Mom would have said something if he'd come home early. We followed the tracks with our eyes. At the back step, they didn't just stop. They turned. The prints began to circle the house. A neat curve hugging the siding, each step precise. One ring, then another, twice around, cutting into the existing snow in a perfect loop. Then, on the second pass, they veered off toward our side of the house, toward our bedroom windows that we couldn't see the full path from the yard. The angle was wrong, but we saw enough. The line of prints leading right up beneath where we slept. I felt the first real chill then. Not from the air, from inside, like something cold had opened under my ribs. "We should tell Dad," I said. We stumbled back inside, bringing Snow and panic with us. Dad listened, frown deepening, jaw tightening. He shrugged into his coat, grabbed the flashlight he kept by the door, and stepped into his boots. "Stay here," he said. His voice was calm in that way that made it feel like he was forcing it to be. We didn't stay. We pressed our faces to the glass like kids in a horror movie, watching him. The flashlight beam cut across the yard, bright and harsh. It traced the prints from woods to door, from door around the house. He disappeared out of view. "I don't like this," Dylan whispered. My heart hammered. Each second felt stretched. When Dad came back in, his cheeks were red from the cold, his hair dusted with snow, something else in his eyes. "Well?" Mom asked, trying to sound casual and failing. "No animal," he said. "Too long a stride. Too straight." "Neighbor?" she offered. He shook his head once. "No tracks going back," he said, too softly. "Just in, around, to the kids' windows. Then they stop, at the property line." "Stop how?" I asked. He glanced at me, then away. "They just stop, bud. That should have been our first warning. Not the prints themselves, but the way my dad, my practical, no-nonsense dad, wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, the house felt wrong. Smaller. Quieter. Every sound had an edge. The heater kicking on with a whoosh and a low rattle in the vents. The refrigerator humming. The old wooden frame of the house giving little pops as it adjusted to the temperature drop. Our bedroom was at the back, second floor, twin beds under twin windows that looked out over the yard and the tree line. Mom tucked us in, extra blankets piled on top. She kissed our foreheads, her lips cold from dishes, and told us to get some sleep. The light from the hallway pooled on the floor, stopping right before my bed. When the door clicked shut, darkness folded in. Snow reflects more light than you think. The world outside our windows glowed faintly, blue-white, outlining the curtains. Shadow branches moved against it as the wind picked up. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening. At first, there was only the deep, steady thump of my own heart in my ears. Then the house noises faded into the background and I heard it. Faint, distant. Crunch. Snow compacting under weight. Silence. Another crunch. Closer. My throat went dry. I held my breath until my chest hurt. "Mark," Dylan whispered from the other bed. "You hear that?" I wanted to lie, to say no, to tell him it was just the house or the plows or anything else. "Yeah." I breathed. We lay there, side by side in the dark, listening. Crunch, pause, crunch. The cadence of footsteps, slow, careful, measuring each step. They circled the house once. We could hear the subtle shift in direction, the way the sound came from one side, then faded, then came back from a slightly different angle. Then they stopped moving. Silence. The air felt thick, heavy in my lungs. The hair on my arms rose under the blankets. "He's under the window," Dylan whispered. His voice shook. "Stop," I muttered. "Don't say that." But I knew he was right. The sound had changed. It was no longer circling. It was right beneath us. For a moment, there was nothing. Just that suffocating quiet, the kind you get in a snowstorm, where the world feels padded. Then, very faintly, something like a shift. Not a full step. More like someone adjusting their stance. Snow squeaked softly. I stared at the shadowed ceiling, imagining, knowing, that someone was standing down there, head tilted back, looking up at the dark square of our window. Yes, I wanted to yell for Dad, to leap out of bed and run to their room. But fear pinned me, heavy, crushing. My body refused. "The curtain's moving," Dylan whispered. "It's the heater," I said through clenched teeth. It's just the air. The heater's not on. He said that he was right. The vent's low rattle was silent. The air was still. My eyes adjusted slowly. The faint glow from outside turned the curtains into lighter rectangles. For a second, I swore I saw a darker shape behind one, taller than the sill, narrow, unmoving. I blinked. It was gone. I don't know how long we lay like that. Eventually, exhaustion and terror blurred together and my mind slipped somewhere else. Not sleep exactly, a kind of frozen half-consciousness. When gray light finally seeped into the room, my first thought wasn't that it was morning. It was, did he leave? Dad was already up when we shuffled downstairs. He had his boots on, coat half-zipped, coffee untouched on the table. Mom hovered by the sink, fingers worrying a dish towel. Stay inside, he said, not looking at us. I'm just checking something. We ignored him the second the back door clicked shut. We pressed our faces to the glass. Fresh prints. Clearer than yesterday's. The storm had stopped overnight. Nothing had disturbed them. They stood directly below our windows. Not walking. Not mid-stride. Just their 0.2 deep impressions side by side, pointing up at the house. The snow around them untouched. No trail leading away. No continuation back toward the woods. Just those two final footprints at the edge of our yard, facing inward, as if someone had planted themselves there and stayed, watching. Where did he go? Dylan whispered that my chest ached. Dad came back in a few minutes later, his face paler than the cold could make it. The wind probably filled in the rest, he said when we asked. Too quickly. You know how it drifts. We nodded because we needed to, but all three of us knew that was a lie. Winter ended like it always does. The snow melted. Mud took over the yard. We went back to school. Life layered new worries over the old fear. Until the next year. First big snow of the season. We woke up to Mom yelling for Dad. We ran to the window. Footprints. Same long stride. Same deep impressions. Starting at the tree line. Crossing the yard. Circling the house. This time they stopped not at the edge of the yard. They stopped closer to the house. Halfway between the woods and our windows. As if whoever made them was testing something. Getting bolder. It became a pattern. Every winter, after the first real storm, the prints would show up. Always when we weren't watching. Never with return tracks. Each year, they came a little closer to the house. To us. The year before I left for college, they reached the side of the house again. Right below our old bedroom, even though we'd moved rooms by then. We sold that house 2 years later. After Dad's job moved and Mom said she was done with winters that froze her bones. The new place has neighbors on all sides. No woods. No long, empty yard. No reason for tracks to appear where no one should be walking. The first winter in the new house, I came home for the holidays. I woke up one morning to find Dad standing at the front window, jaw tight, staring out at the small patch of lawn. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. There, in the thin strip of snow between the bushes and the sidewalk, were two footprints. Not a trail. Just two. Facing the house. Facing my old room. Now, in my apartment miles away, I shouldn't have to think about any of this. There's no yard. No woods. Just a narrow alley, a fire escape, and a lot of exhaust. But every winter, after the first snow dusts the city, I wake up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding. Because outside my window, several floors up, I'll hear it again. Faint. Impossible. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. If you ever see footprints in fresh snow leading from the woods to your house, and nowhere else, believe what your instincts are screaming. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. Don't tell yourself it's nothing, because some things just pass through, and some things come back. Every year, a little closer. My name's Mark. I'm 32 now, live in a cramped apartment over a bakery in a city that barely gets real snow, and I still wake up some nights absolutely sure I can hear it again. That sound. Crunch, pause, crunch. You never forget the sound of footsteps in snow when you know they're not supposed to be there. Back then, my world was a 2-story house on the edge of a small town, a strip of woods out back, and my little brother, Dylan, who followed me everywhere. I was 10. He was 8. Our lives were simple. School, cartoons, sledding, arguing over who got the last packet of hot chocolate. And then that snowstorm hit that they'd been talking about it for days. Once in a decade, the weatherman said. My mom stocked up on groceries and candles. My dad laughed it off, said, "It's just snow," and waited until the last minute to bring in firewood. When school called the night before and announced closures, we lost our minds. No class, no homework, just snowed. If I had known what that day was going to turn into, I would have prayed for school. The storm started before dawn, thick, heavy flakes dropping straight down like the sky was spilling stuffing. By the time we tumbled out of bed, the world outside our windows was a blank page. No street, no driveway, no fence, just white swallowing everything. Our house backed right onto the woods. In summer, you could barely see through the trees. In winter, all those trunks stood exposed, black lines in a white blur. Mom bundled us up until we could barely move. Layers on layers, scarves scratchy against our necks, gloves stiff. When she opened the back door, the cold rushed in with a smell like metal and clean ice. It hurt to breathe. We didn't care. We launched ourselves into it. The snow came up to our shins in the yard, higher in drifts. Every step made that satisfying compacting sound, a soft crunch you could feel through your boots. Our breath puffed out in clouds. The air was so cold my nose hairs froze. I remember that weird sting when I inhaled. We spent the whole morning building forts, tunneling into the side of a drift by the fence, throwing lopsided snowballs. Dylan kept falling and laughing with that high, breathless giggle he had when he was too excited. Nothing felt wrong then. It was just a perfect snow day. We went in around noon when we couldn't feel our toes. Mom's kitchen smelled like tomato soup and grilled cheese. Our wet things steamed on hooks by the door. Our hair dripped melting snow onto the linoleum. I should have paid more attention when Dad looked out the back window over his coffee, his brow creasing just slightly. "That wind's picking up," he muttered. "Don't go near the woods this afternoon." We promised. We meant it, mostly. But kids' promises stretch under the right kind of temptation. By late afternoon, the light outside had turned that strange blue-gray you only see in winter. The storm had eased, but everything was muffled, like the world had thick walls now. "Want to see how deep it is by the trees?" Dylan asked, pressing his face to the glass. I should have said no. Instead, I said, "Just the yard. We stay in the yard." We wrestled back into our gear, the fabric still damp at the edges, smelling faintly of wet wool and kid sweat, and stepped out again. The air felt different, colder but also heavier. The silence settled on my shoulders. No plows yet, no cars, no distant voices, just the whisper of snow settling and the faint creak of tree branches shifting under the weight. Our footprints from the morning had blurred but were still there, shallow dents leading from the door to the forts and back. We climbed on top of one drift and pretended it was a castle. "Look," Dylan said suddenly. He was pointing toward the far corner of the yard, where the tree line started. His mitten shook. At first, I didn't see it. Just the fence half buried, the woods dark and dense behind it. Then my eyes adjusted. Footprints. Not ours. Ours were messy, close together, small. These were different. Long strides, deep impressions. Each print sunk farther down than ours had, even though whoever made them should have hit the same hard-packed layer we had. They started at the edge of the trees, where the first line of trunks broke the white. They came out of the woods, straight as if someone had walked with their eyes locked on our house. They crossed the yard without wavering, past the sagging bird feeder, past the half-built snow fort, straight to our back door. A single line of them. No second set alongside, no stagger, no drag marks, just a purposeful walk from the trees to our home. "Those aren't ours," Dylan said quietly. "I know," I said. We hadn't been near the trees. We hadn't come from that direction. My stomach tightened. "Maybe Dad," he whispered. Dad worked at a factory across town. His car wasn't in the driveway. Mom would have said something if he'd come home early. We followed the tracks with our eyes. At the back step, they didn't just stop. They turned. The prints began to circle the house, a neat curve hugging the siding, each step precise. One ring, then another. twice around, cutting into the existing snow in a perfect loop. Then, on the second pass, they veered off toward our side of the house, toward our bedroom windows that we couldn't see the full path from the yard. The angle was wrong, but we saw enough. The line of prints leading right up beneath where we slept. I felt the first real chill then. Not from the air, from inside, like something cold had opened under my ribs. "We should tell Dad," I said. We stumbled back inside, bringing Snow and panic with us. Dad listened, frown deepening, jaw tightening. He shrugged into his coat, grabbed the flashlight he kept by the door, and stepped into his boots. "Stay here," he said. His voice was calm in that way that made it feel like he was forcing it to be. We didn't stay. We pressed our faces to the glass like kids in a horror movie, watching him. The flashlight beam cut across the yard, bright and harsh. It traced the prints from woods to door, from door around the house. He disappeared out of view. "I don't like this," Dylan whispered. My heart hammered. Each second felt stretched. When Dad came back in, his cheeks were red from the cold, his hair dusted with snow, something else in his eyes. "Well?" Mom asked, trying to sound casual and failing. "No animal," he said. "Too long a stride. Too straight." "Neighbor?" she offered. He shook his head once. "No tracks going back," he said, too softly. "Just in, around, to the kids' windows. Then they stop, at the property line." "Stop how?" I asked. He glanced at me, then away. "They just stop, bud. That should have been our first warning. Not the prints themselves, but the way my dad, my practical, no-nonsense dad, wouldn't meet my eyes. That night, the house felt wrong, smaller, quieter. Every sound had an edge, the heater kicking on with a whoosh and a low rattle in the vents. The refrigerator humming. The old wooden frame of the house giving little pops as it adjusted to the temperature drop. Our bedroom was at the back, second floor, twin beds under twin windows that looked out over the yard and the tree line. Mom tucked us in, extra blankets piled on top. She kissed our foreheads, her lips cold from dishes, and told us to get some sleep. The light from the hallway pooled on the floor, stopping right before my bed. When the door clicked shut, darkness folded in. Snow reflects more light than you think. The world outside our windows glowed faintly, blue-white, outlining the curtains. Shadow branches moved against it as the wind picked up. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening. At first, there was only the deep, steady thump of my own heart in my ears. Then the house noises faded into the background and I heard it, faint, distant. Crunch. Snow compacting under weight. Silence. Another crunch. Closer. My throat went dry. I held my breath until my chest hurt. "Mark," Dylan whispered from the other bed. "You hear that?" I wanted to lie, to say no, to tell him it was just the house or the plows or anything else. "Yeah." I breathed. We lay there, side by side in the dark, listening. Crunch, pause, crunch. The cadence of footsteps, slow, careful, measuring each step. They circled the house once. We could hear the subtle shift in direction, the way the sound came from one side, then faded, then came back from a slightly different angle. Then they stopped moving. Silence. The air felt thick, heavy in my lungs. The hair on my arms rose under the blankets. "He's under the window," Dylan whispered. His voice shook. "Stop," I muttered. "Don't say that." But I knew he was right. The sound had changed. It was no longer circling. It was right beneath us. For a moment, there was nothing. Just that suffocating quiet, the kind you get in a snowstorm, where the world feels padded. Then, very faintly, something like a shift. Not a full step. More like someone adjusting their stance. Snow squeaked softly. I stared at the shadowed ceiling, imagining, knowing, that someone was standing down there, head tilted back, looking up at the dark square of our window. Yes, I wanted to yell for Dad, to leap out of bed and run to their room. But fear pinned me, heavy, crushing. My body refused. "The curtain's moving?" Dylan whispered. "It's the heater," I said through clenched teeth. "It's just the air. The heater's not on." he said that he was right. The vent's low rattle was silent. The air was still. My eyes adjusted slowly. The faint glow from outside turned the curtains into lighter rectangles. For a second, I swore I saw a darker shape behind one, taller than the sill, narrow, unmoving. I blinked. It was gone. I don't know how long we lay like that. Eventually, exhaustion and terror blurred together and my mind slipped somewhere else. Not sleep exactly, a kind of frozen half-consciousness. When gray light finally seeped into the room, my first thought wasn't that it was morning. It was, did he leave? Dad was already up when we shuffled downstairs. He had his boots on, coat half-zipped, coffee untouched on the table. Mom hovered by the sink, fingers worrying a dish towel. "Stay inside," he said, not looking at us. "I'm just checking something." We ignored him the second the back door clicked shut. We pressed our faces to the glass. Fresh prints. Clearer than yesterday's. The storm had stopped overnight. Nothing had disturbed them. They stood directly below our windows. Not walking. Not mid-stride. Just their 0.2 deep impressions side by side, pointing up at the house. The snow around them untouched. No trail leading away. No continuation back toward the woods. Just those two final footprints at the edge of our yard, facing inward, as if someone had planted themselves there and stayed, watching. "Where did he go?" Dylan whispered. My chest ached. Dad came back in a few minutes later, his face paler than the cold could make it. "The wind probably filled in the rest," he said when we asked. "Too quickly. You know how it drifts." We nodded because we needed to, but all three of us knew that was a lie. Winter ended, like it always does. The snow melted. Mud took over the yard. We went back to school. Life layered new worries over the old fear. Until the next year. First big snow of the season, we woke up to Mom yelling for Dad. We ran to the window. Footprints. Same long stride. Same deep impressions. Starting at the tree line, crossing the yard, circling the house. This time they stopped not at the edge of the yard. They stopped closer to the house, halfway between the woods and our windows, as if whoever made them was testing something. Getting bolder. It became a pattern. Every winter, after the first real storm, the prints would show up. Always when we weren't watching, never with return tracks. Each year, they came a little closer to the house, to us. The year before I left for college, they reached the side of the house again, right below our old bedroom. Even though we'd moved rooms by then, we sold that house 2 years later, after Dad's job moved and Mom said she was done with winters that froze her bones. The new place has neighbors on all sides. No woods, no long, empty yard. No reason for tracks to appear where no one should be walking. The first winter in the new house, I came home for the holidays. I woke up one morning to find Dad standing at the front window, jaw tight, staring out at the small patch of lawn. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. There, in the thin strip of snow between the bushes and the sidewalk, were 2 footprints. Not a trail, just 2 facing the house, facing my old room. Now, in my apartment miles away, I shouldn't have to think about any of this. There's no yard, no woods, just a narrow alley, a fire escape, and a lot of exhaust. But every winter, after the first snow dusts the city, I wake up in the middle of the night with my heart pounding because outside my window, several floors up, I'll hear it again. Faint. Impossible. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. If you ever see footprints in fresh snow leading from the woods to your house and nowhere else, believe what your instincts are screaming. Don't let anyone talk you out of it. Don't tell yourself it's nothing. Because some things just pass through. And some things come back. Every year. A little closer.